So we'll be tracking a camera in Nuke and replacing / adding elements to bring more life to the environment. So the idea with this is that you would see this constantly in lots of movies, is that they have something in the scene that just needs to be replaced, enhanced, removed. We're going to be doing a pretty major adjustment to it. It builds very easily off of this camera tracking assignment because the first step is camera tracking. The other part is just how do we set up the mat, and then how do we go further. So we're diagnosing a piece of footage, tracking a camera in Nuke, setting up the 3D workflow. Those 3 things we already did in the last one. We're going to do them again. And then creating imagery, blending elements, and then doing finishing touches. Turn-ins, screenshot, and movie, 1280 by 720, points possible, 10. So that's in the book. You can get that up there. I'm going to go to there. I'm going to go here. So you want to find a piece of footage that doesn't have a whole lot going on. If there's a lot of people moving around, it's not going to be a good piece of footage. With camera tracking, if you've done more than just the standard stuff that we looked at last time, what you'll see is that it's very picky about what it uses as a tracker, and we want to make sure that it gets the easiest stuff to track. So in this piece of footage, if I hit play, let me take this down to a lower setting here. This is basically just a camera moving towards these mountains, okay? Now we'll be replacing stuff behind the mountains. We could replace the mountains as well if we wanted to. But the camera move on this is very slow, very smooth going in. I'm not providing these. I want you to go find them. They're on the VidEvo site. You just search HD video free. One of the first ones that comes up is Pixabay. You can try that too. And videvo.net is the one. I've also used VidEasy. Okay, try to find a good piece of footage, nice and smooth. If you find something with movement, don't be afraid. Some movement is fine. So like this, there's steam that's moving across it. Let me open these in After Effects so it doesn't take 1.5 years to see these. It might take 1.5 years to open After Effects. There we go. P drive, 1960. Matte painting footage. Where's my footage? No, I never import or I never moved them. That's why. This, that. All right, here we go. So I found 8 videos. They're not crazy videos. Also, if you remember from your camera tracking one, the length of time obviously plays a huge role. If you have 2,000 frames, that's going to take a long time to calculate, and if something's wrong with it, then why would, we got to do it again. Think about where the end result is going to eventually end up is probably in your demo reel. If it turns out good, you want to put it in there. Typically, that's going to be about 3 or 4 seconds. So if you find a good clip that's like 5 or 6 or 7 seconds, that's a good time frame. Even if you don't use the whole thing in your demo reel, having that piece is what you want. So here's a couple pieces. Okay, subtle movement. You see the people are like walking. That's fine. I have lots of area here inside the frame that I could track with. Here's another piece of footage. This one has a lot of stuff that I could track. Lots of white glaciers sitting there, clouds that are in the sky that aren't really moving, the mountain way in the back. What's going to be the problem, though, when I track this piece? The water, right? Because the water is moving. Nuke will think that the water is a static object and try to track it. So we would have to tell Nuke, don't track this piece of footage, or don't track this area, okay? That's one of the new things I'll show today. All right, what about this one? What's the thing that's moving? Smoke, right? Same thing. Not a whole lot of movement, but enough that it could cause a problem. We would just have to tell Nuke not to track that piece. Here's that mountain piece. Again, it's a nice smooth motion in. Something like this, even though it is a nice smooth push into the scene, could cause some issues just because of how much detail is on the ground. There's a lot of very similar looking colors there where that tracker could be jumping around, okay? So just something to be aware of. This one here, I thought when I looked at the piece online that it would have been a good one, but what do you see happening? There's these little pieces of like fuzz that fly across the screen. We could definitely try to track this piece if we really wanted it, but we may find it's just useless because these pieces just keep flying in there, and there's not really a good way to not have it do those. Okay, how about this one? Water again, right? Now this one will be a lot trickier because basically the left half of the screen is constantly moving. And so we'd only be able to get information off the right side of the screen, and we would have to hope that we get enough data over here that it would allow us to do that. This could be a good one. There's a dog or something running right there. There's a guy there. Okay, so this could be a good one. This could be a good one too, except for two things. One is this, and then the other one is these right here, right? So I'd have to just make sure it doesn't use those. So I grabbed a couple pieces, I dropped them onto the new comp. The same process I did last time. I went to my comp settings and reset my start time. I paid attention to my frames per second, 25. And then I went and exported the sequence out. I don't know why that's so big, there we go. I told it to be a TIFF. I did my resizing here. Instead of going into my comp and shrinking it down and then scaling the footage, if you click that, you can simply just say 1280 by 720, and it'll automatically shrink the footage down right at export time. Another thing you can do, let's say you have 4 or 5 pieces, you're not sure which one's going to work best, go into After Effects, export them all out. If you've never used this, you can actually make a preset where I say make a template, and I say TIFF 1280, and now if I were to have another piece of footage, I can simply just grab from that list that TIFF 1280 and it'll automatically use those same settings on it. And then I go here, give it name, you know, that stuff, hit render. All right. So then I brought my pieces of footage in. All right, so let's go to this one here. Stay there. And I'm going to track it. So I'm going to just put a camera tracker on here just so you can see what it's going to do first, and then I'll show you how we're going to correct it. So this is what we did on the last assignment. We went to settings, we went to preview features, and I cranked this up to like 600. And you can see right away it's already tracking where that guy is at, where these kids are at. And if I went further up, it would still track where they're at. So what we're going to do, let me delete that. I don't need to, but I'm just going to do it so it doesn't get confused, or I don't. I'm going to add a roto. And what the roto is going to do is basically isolate to say, don't track this area. So I'm just going to manually animate this thing moving with the people, and that will give me enough data for the tracker not to track them, okay? And this doesn't have to be clean. I just have to get a general shape. So I can use an ellipse, works fine. I go to the very start, that's where it goes, that's where it begins. I go to the end of this, I just scoot the whole thing over. It automatically keyframes it, so now it'll move with the shapes. If it goes out, I just squish it back over, stretch it out if I need to. I want to pay attention to their shadows as well, so I don't get their shadows in here. If you get it like a frame or 2 frames, it's not going to be a big deal. Nuke should do a pretty good job of cutting it out anyway. But if it's there for an extended amount of time, you really want to move it out of the frame. All right, so that's pretty good. You'll see I set, I don't know, 5 or 6 keys there. Cool. All right, so now camera tracker time. If you spell it right. Preview tracks. Set this to 600, looks good. You'll see it still is on the guy. I have to go back to my camera tracker and tell it to use this mask. So I just say source alpha and watch what happens. Doesn't track anywhere where I put that mask, okay? If I'm doing this piece of footage, I would do the same thing. I would mask off all this area and make sure that it tells it don't track that fog at all. If I'm doing this, there's not really anything I need to track. If I'm doing one of the other pieces, again, you just kind of look for what's moving, what could cause a problem, and you just eliminate that with a mask. On this one, I would basically outline all of this water and then go up a bit, outline all the water again, go up a little bit, outline all the water again, and just keep adjusting that. This is a pretty simple one with just these people right here. Another thing I'm going to do is go into my settings and adjust my detection threshold. This is basically going to tell it how picky to be about where it puts a point. You'll see there's a couple points that are kind of floating up here. It doesn't really make sense. There's nothing to track. So as I play with this, I go this way. You'll see that it eliminates those. If I go this way, you'll see it adds a lot more. Very easy to see. You just got to play with it until it looks better. You definitely don't want to eliminate everything. If I put it up to 1 and I lost all my points down here, then I would not do that. I'll say refine feature location too, just to give it a little higher resolution. Should be good. Camera tracker and track. So now it's going to do the same thing. It's going to go through and track the footage. Notice that my frames on this were 117 frames. This is the whole clip of this one. This is not a shortened version. I would have done that inside of After Effects if I was going to do that. You can also, if you get to a point you're like, okay, I want only 4 seconds or 5 seconds of this, you can delete the rest of the clip. Just go to the frames and delete the rest of the clip if you don't want it. You don't have to go into After Effects, re-render it out into a new file. Just delete the frames you don't want. I have this done already as far as the tracking goes, but we'll just watch it and see with much success how it works. There we go. Now we can look at them and see. It looks great. Nothing's going crazy so far. Let's hit solve. And we solve. And you'll see the error on this. You basically want to pay attention to it. On one of them that I tracked, it was up to 2. I eliminated some of the points and went down to 0.75 or something. If it's up to like 5 or 10, you probably have a horrible solve. You can always push forward, add some stuff, and then come back and refine it if you need to. So I'm going to leave it the way it is, but otherwise I would go to auto track. I would pull down my max track error, pull down my max error here, and then delete the rejected stuff, and then refine it. Update solve. Okay. I'm not going to do that though, so I'll just hit undo. Cool. So there's my footage. I'm going to hit create camera, and then I'm going to look at it. Now, one thing I'm going to do different than I did before, let me view the camera here. If you look at how big this area is, this is that entire, like, I don't know, wherever they're at, Arctic area. These are probably the sky. These are probably the clouds. Way over here are probably the mountains. I want to really make this whole thing bigger. When we were in Maya, I showed you how I can scale the entire scene up. You can also do that here. Way on the far side of the camera tracker, you have scene, and you can do things like translate the scene, rotate the scene, play with the uniform scale. So if I set this to 5 or 20, you'll see how it just extends everything out, making it feel a little bit more roomy. So you don't have everything basically on top of each other. All right, so that's better. I like that. I'm going to close all these. I'm also going to hit S and make sure all my stuff is set up. 25 frames per second, 1280 by 720. My project directory is, that's what this one is, because that was the original piece of footage. So I want to stick to that. And then my file, I'm going to call this Auto Painting 2. There we go. All right. So now I'm going to go and close this. Hit Tab here. Oops. Oh, I ruined it now. There we go. And I'm just going to create some additional nodes. All right. So for this setup that we're going to do, everything is going to be piped into a scene node. Okay, I mentioned that before, that you could use it. If you only have one item, you don't need to use it. But with this, we really want to get in the habit of using this scene node, because we might have 4, 5, or 6 things all going into this area, okay? And that scene node connects to the camera, and then the scan line render goes after that. My camera's here, my scene is there. Now it's time to start organizing some stuff. My background will be here. Actually, let's delete that. Let's do it the right way. Let's just get in the habit of doing it the right way. I'm going to add a merge, and this will be my merge here, and then that will be my background. And I'll just delete these two there. You really want to get in the habit of doing it like this. So whatever comes into your scene goes to the scanline render, and basically it's just an asset at that point, just like we did our corner pin, just like when we did our planar tracking, just like when we did our 2D tracking stuff. This here is basically just getting a piece of footage lined up exactly where we need it, way in the background. Then we take that and merge it on top of here. That way between these two we can adjust color, we can do whatever we need to between these two parts. All right. So I need to create something so I can cut out the sky. I don't like the sky. I want to replace it. I want to put a building behind the mountains, whatever it is. Okay. So I'm going to go and create a card. If I go to my camera tracker and I double click, let me set this to 1 again. If I right click on the middle of the mountain, so the footage here is actually really nice where it doesn't pan too much. If I go this way, I can see, you know, there's a little smidge on the right side and a big area on the left. If I go this way, it's, you know, pretty much right in the center. So I'm going to go right to the center of this, right click on one of these points and just say create a card. And what this does is it just creates a card way at that point. That marker that's back there, it creates a card very much like After Effects does, okay? Now the card is going to go into the scene. All of our 3D elements will go into that. All right, camera, just stick up there. There you go. I can get access to this arrow. Anything I add to the arrow. Cool. So now we're going to come back to my scan line. And we don't see anything. The card is way back there. If I hit A, there it is. Way down. If I go to my merge and I view this, I see nothing. Oh, there it is. There's that card, okay? Obviously way too small. I'm going to scale it up to an enormous size. So let's say 30. Nope, not big enough. Let's keep going. 80, 150, 175, 170. Whoa, 170. There you go. Oh, man. All right, 250 it is. All right, now I made it as big as the environment because of what I need to do in order to get what I'm going to be doing next. I'm going to add a roto right before it. Okay? Whenever you add a roto to a card, it brings transparency into the card. Now the card's invisible, we can't see it, so now I'm going to draw a shape of where I want that to actually happen. So I'm using my pen tool, which is the Bezier, and I'm just going to draw on here. And you'll see how you may want to zoom in and get really close because this is going to be the edge of where that's going to be cut out. Come on, you're so close. If it's not exact, you can always fudge it a little bit, but if it's way off, it's not going to work, okay? So you can see how much time I'm taking just to kind of outline this. I can always come back and again adjust it afterwards. And for the sake of the lecture, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to doot, doot, there, 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 and there. All right. So now that cut the mountain out. I'm going to hit this invert, and now it cuts the sky out. Okay. So now the sky is just totally gone. I turn that off. Now what should happen is when I hit play, that mask that's way back there should follow the shape of this. So if I hit play, you'll see that the mountains look like they're permanently cut out. The sky way in the back is just gone. And if I get closer to it, you can see that my roto holds up pretty good. There's not a whole lot of loss of shape there. It does lose it right here at the end, but I can animate the roto kind of scooting back in if I need to by just going to the very end of this, double clicking my roto, and just adjusting these points some. There we go. Okay, and so now as I go through, you'll see, perfect, it lines up awesomely. All right, so now what is a matte? All right, so this is the first step, getting everything kind of cut out. So now that we have a cutout here, now we can start adding stuff to the scene. Every time we want to add something, we will create a card and we will add that item to the card and use Roto to blend it in. You can use images from textures.com. If you find any textures here, they have other stuff besides textures. Sometimes they actually have buildings, houses, whatever. Here's a bunch of stuff. There we go. Let's say we grab this, and I will log in. Yes. And you obviously want to grab the biggest one, but I am going to grab the medium one because that's all I can purchase with my credits. I have it open here. Double clicked. So I'm just putting that image inside of my folder, wherever my folder went. There it is. There it is. All right. Where's Nuke? There it is. All right. So I'm going to read this in first, just so I know what I'm working with. Here's my artwork. Here's my footage. There it is. So I have to decide how I want to incorporate this piece of footage into my scene. As this is already basically at the base of a mountain, is there an opportunity for me to even put it, let's say, on the snowy area here, or maybe even down there? That might be a good spot to just kind of throw it into that area. I think I'm just going to throw it into that area. I'm going to just do the easiest thing I can do there. So I'm going to go back to my camera tracker. I'm going to find a point that's relatively over there and just create a card. I'll drag the card over here, drag it into my scene node, and then drag this into that. And so now if I were to look at my merge, I should see my card somewhere. Where are you at? There he is. He's so tiny. All right, let's make this bigger. Remember the other one was like 200 pixels? So let's put this at 50. That's almost the perfect size. Look at that. All right, we'll leave it at like 60. Okay. So that's pretty good for now. So I'm going to go into that image, and I'm just going to go through and just cut out parts of this image. That's all I'm going to do. I need a roto, so I'm going to hit O after it. I'll make this big so I can see it. And I'm just going to go through and just cut these things out. I'm going to leave a little bit of an edge at the bottom, and this is where it's going to feather into the rest of it. So I don't have to be too precise there. It's only when I get to those hard surfaces that I want to be a little bit more accurate. All right, and again, I'm kind of going a bit quicker. I can always come back and tweak this. And it might be a good idea, especially if you're not sure if you're going to use something, do a rough cut, see what it looks like, and then come back and then tweak it. I'm going to cut out all this stuff. I don't want that there. You could also go into Photoshop and draw your paths out too if you wanted to, if that was easier for you. You just do like we've done before, save it as a ping, with transparency and all that stuff. I don't know what that is back there. We'll just assume that it's nothing.
I think it might be another building.
It might be. Well, that guy doesn't get paid enough to be in my matte painting. Holy cow, that's a huge smokestack right there. Oops. All right, I'm going to really speed this up. I don't know how far there I am. All right, good enough. Okay, so that's cut out. If I look at my merge, it's going to look exactly the same as it did before. So what do I have to do to get my roto to actually be applied to this? What was that? Do something, right. So I gave this an alpha channel. How do I tell it to use the alpha channel? Pre-mult, thank you. There it is. So now I have this little village sitting there. Obviously the footage that you choose and the source images that you choose should match. If I have a worm's eye view of a building, I can't throw it into here. That doesn't make sense because my camera is dead on. I have to make sure that whatever footage I have matches the same perspective. If you have the opportunity, grab your phone, take pictures of stuff at the same angle, and you can use that inside your scene. Obviously this still doesn't match, right? That looks pretty gross. Let's go back before this. Actually, I can go back. I'll go after this. I'll add a grade node. And I'm just going to go into my gain here and just start playing with these. Something I like to do that's kind of easier for me to see what colors I need to adjust is I'll go into a white area and yeah, if I go into this white area right here and I look at the values, you can see that my red is 0.89, my green is 0.93, and my blue is 0.93. So of those three numbers, which number is the least? Red, right? So that means that there's very little red or less red than the other ones. If I move this over here, same thing. If I move this over here, same thing. So in this image, there's typically less red than there is green or blue. So when I go over here to, oops, where are you at? There you are. To this image, as I hover my mouse over this and I look at these, I can see, okay, the red is now less because I just took it down. Let me put it back where it was. All right, so now the red is pretty close to the blue, and the green is the highest. So I'm going to pull the red down some, pull the blue up some, and already you can see there's a huge difference in getting those colors to line up a bit better, because now it has more of this bluish tone to it. I also probably want to take, I think that white is just too much, so I'm going to go to the white point and just push a little bit less blue into that. There we go. And I also think I probably need to put a defocus on it. It might be a little bit too crisp for where it is back there. There it is. Cool. So now I have this little village that's just sitting on top of that stuff. There it is before, there it is after. A little adjustment. Okay, and if I hit play, what should happen is it should look like that village is sitting right there at the base of that mountain. I also want to look at, obviously, scale. If I scaled it up too big, it would look ridiculous, like giants live there. If it's too small, then it's not going to work either. The good thing is with that card, all I have to do is just make that card bigger, and that makes that civilization bigger. If I need to adjust the position, I can grab the translate Y and just scoot that up some. And I may want to go into this roto here and just adjust. Where's my roto at? There we go. Just adjust these points at the bottom. If I grab these and then grab their feathering bits, there we go. This will help feather and soften and blend those pieces in more. It's basically just taking this mask and just smoothing it out. I didn't grab the mask. I grabbed that. we go. All right, so now let's take a look at that and see what it looks like. There you go. So now you can see that's what that looks like. It's a little bit softer on the bottom now. I could definitely adjust it. If something's going to go behind the mountains here, I'm going to hit Tab. Come on. And look where this card is. This is the card that's basically cutting out the mountains. That card is where the mountains are. Oddly, this is where that building is. That's kind of weird how far back that is. Well, whatever, it works, so why not? So all I'm going to do if I want to replace the sky is I'm just going to create a new card. Drag that in. And then I'm just going to push it back further. So I think if I push this back in the Z direction, the other way, and make this even bigger, no, even bigger, like 5,000. There we go. And I go back to this. I look for a different sky. Again, look at perspective. That's above the clouds. That doesn't work. Above the clouds. Look at that. Individual clouds. I can make my own. All right. Let's look up a different one. Sunrise. What? Sunset. Bless you. Oh, I can put my own mountains in too if I would like. All right, there's one. So I'll grab this one, I'll download it. Drop it into my images. There's that new sky. And so now when I come down here and I look at this, oops. Something has gone awry. This goes here, yes. This goes there. Oh, right, oops. My alpha here is cutting it out, so I can't see it. I'll adjust you after. No, I won't. I'll adjust you now. All right, I'll play with that after. I have to do something different there. All right, so let's take this off. All right, so let's look at the scan line again. Oops. Come on. There it is. I'm going to adjust this alpha, roto, and scoot that down here, scoot this down here. There we go. All right, so I'm going to have two scenes. This one is my cutout one, so this is cleaning it up. And then this one's going to be all the stuff I'm adding to it. So same camera, there's my scene, there's that. Okay, so there's my little village, there's my sky. There's no background being cut in yet because it doesn't know where to put it in. So I'm going to go to this mask and drag it to the other scan line. And that should cut that out. That cuts it out. Okay, now I have my new sky in there, and then this card will go into that one. No. Scoot here, scoot here. This is going to get messy with all these cameras and cards. That. And scene. And camera again. And one last merge. Come on. There we go. So now everything's back together. All right. So I ended up with this one because of how I did it. I have 3 areas here. This one is cutting out the mountains. That's what that's for. This one is replacing stuff behind the mask, so like way in the background. And then this one is stuff I'm adding in front of the mask. So stuff I would add like the village or whatever. So anything that I'm adding here in this main area would go into that far right one. Anything that's going in the sky way in the back will go in the second one. And anything I'm using to cut things out would go in the very first one. If I found a spaceship, I could drop the spaceship in there and do the same thing. I don't think I'll find a spaceship on here, but maybe, nope. Maybe we'll find Google has something that is royalty free that we can use. Tools, images, tools. For commercial use with modification. I will borrow that one. Yep, that's fine. Free for publicly, no attribution required. Sweet. I will not download or not log in. I will steal that one then. 1960 matte painting. Artwork. Spaceship. There we go. Okay. Let me just create a backdrop here. Just so I keep myself straight as to what's there. So this is behind mountains. Or above the mountains, I guess you could say. And this one is in front of. And then this one over here is my mask. There we go. All right. So, if I'm putting the spaceship in the sky, where is the spaceship going to go? Right here, yep. So we create a card. Once we have the idea of where things are located, we don't need to keep adding a card with the camera tracker. You can just make a card. There you go. Card geometry, not 3D card. We'll connect it here. I'll read in my spaceship, connect that. I will go and grab the card and move it all the way back here. So there's the sky. Because everything that we put into our scene has to be on a card in 3D. Makes it bigger, so 20, 50. There it is. All right, so now I can't see exactly where it's at, so I'll go to my end merge. Holy cow, that's huge. All right, but that works, right? So now we'll go and add a roto to this. And then we would just go through and just outline this shape. Perfect. Obviously spend more time rotoing out your stuff. Pre-multiplying it. And then there it is. And now if I wanted it to, let's say, be smaller, I'll shrink it down. There it is. And if I want to move it, I can actually move the card. So I would just go after the card. I would go to, it's called axis. Come on. It's not called axis. It's called transform 3D. Where are you at? Geometry, point cloud. Transform geometry, that's what I had. There we go. So transform geometry, that goes here, this goes into the scene. And now, if I go here, the pivot is always at the origin. So if I hold down Control, it doesn't want to go. All right. Let me go to the card. Let me delete this, delete that. There we go. And now I'll move the transform geo all the way back. Move that up some. There it is. Now I can move that transform geo and just animate this if I wanted to, let's say, fly across the scene. There we go. All right. So we'll rewind this to the beginning. I will set a keyframe on its translates. I'll go to the end and scoot it over in the X direction. And now it's going to fly across the screen. It's amazing. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this. It's just a matter of getting the nodes lined up correctly. The more complex you get, the more you just have to play with the things to make sure you're getting it set up. You will end up with this like spidery type thing. It's just inevitable. You can copy the camera and paste it, and it'll still stay connected. And then you don't have to worry about always having the same one that's going across your entire scene and stretching out these black lines. The green lines are fine, but the black lines they can be annoying. Set that there, much nicer. So here's my mask to cut out the mountains. There's my behind mountain stuff. Here's my in front of mountain stuff. And then here's everything coming together right at the end. So I will definitely go through and organize that a bit more. But as much stuff as we want to add into this, we can just add it. If I added a building right here, I could just add a building right there. Hey, where'd my one village go? They might have. They might have abducted them. That's here. Oh, look at that. There's like... the card went right up to that. Like everything went to that for some reason. That's very weird. So just connect all these things back in. I don't know what I must have clicked to do that. And then that goes back there. Village is back in. Of course, I need to adjust his color too. I can add a grade node and then still do the same thing, playing with his color. Right? So it probably needs more blue. It probably actually needs to be desaturated too because of how far it is back there. There you go. And it probably also needs a little bit of defocus. And you can really get fancy with stuff like that. Once you have it set up, like I could take, if this had lights on it, which has one light right there, I could make that light glow and kind of flash. One of the popular things people will do with these matte painting things is they'll do like a day for night shots, where they're basically taking a day scene and turning it into a night shot. There you go. Here's a good example. Here's the day shot, and then they make it look like a night shot by changing the colors, enhancing the glows and the lights. Well, they could have used Photoshop too, but yes, people do it in Nuke when you have a live action piece. You can do it in After Effects too, it's just a matter of doing it a different way. This one, After Effects doesn't have something like this, where we're able to control it this same way. It's similar, we can do stuff like it, it's just not the same exact way. Okay, so that'll be the starting point for doing this. Get your stuff tracked, get your masks in there, start cutting things out, and just start adding stuff. Next week I'll go over some more stuff of different things we can add to it, color adjustments and all that. Okay? Questions?